The New York Times remaining silent after one of its reporters compared Trump supporters to enemies of the state. One of the now deleted tweets reading, "Today is January 6th. Select Committee underscores the America's current essential national security dilemma. Work to combat legislative national security threats now entails calling a politician's supporters enemies of the state."
Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth. Sorry, Pete, I'm having a little problem here with the name today. Pete Hegseth is a Fox and Friends weekend co-host. Pete, good to see you. Let me put up this tweet. This is from Kate Benner, who was the DOJ correspondent for the New York Times. She wrote, quote, "Today's January 6th Select Committee underscores the America's current essential NatSec dilemma. Work to combat legitimate national security threats now entails calling a politician's supporters, quote, enemies of the state." No response from the New York Times about this. What do you think?
Well, first of all, this is the New York Times top justice reporter, right? So supposed to be reporting on law and order, equal justice in this country. Of course, there's no statement because we know the newsroom of the New York Times supports this particular view, especially after January 6th, that not just people who were there, but people who support President Trump may have questions about the election, ultimately are enemies of the state. Now, it would be one thing if Katie Benner was bemoaning this idea that unfortunately we've come to a place where there's a partisan commission where Nancy Pelosi has picked partisans, even on the Republican side, who see January 6th a certain way. And that's unfortunate because that leads to creating an environment where one side is deemed an enemy of the state. That's not what she's saying. She's stating matter-of-factly through a series of other tweets that followed in that thread, because one side of the aisle is the enemy of the state, what do we do about that? How do we handle that as a country? Especially, and she says, especially because of the unresolved Russia investigation and unresolved 2 impeachments, one over a Ukraine phone call and one over January 6th. So she's pointing out this should have been resolved already because this is an illegitimate president, former president, because of what happened with Russia and the hoax there, what happened with the impeachments. So this should have been resolved. And unfortunately, this committee won't resolve it either because we all know they're enemies of the state. Why can't we just say it? Why would the New York Times say anything about it? That's what their reporting's been about ever since January 6th.
She subsequently deleted that tweet and issued another tweet saying, quote, "I deleted unclearly worded tweets regarding the January 6th committee hearing." Was there anything unclear about what she had tweeted?
To me, there couldn't be anything more clearer than designating one side of the aisle enemies of the state. Of course, that's what Donald Trump was to the deep state and the left during his entire presidency. He was an enemy of the state, hence the witch hunt that occurred on Russia, hence the impeachments that went on. Once they got rid of him, then they turn at his supporters. And that's where it gets deeper and more insidious. And that's where people like me look around at Facebook's misinformation campaign in coordination with the White House, where they're taking their cues from them. You look at the treatment of the people who are indefinitely detained after January 6th, first-time offenders, many of them nonviolent, who have not seen a court date and have not seen charges, when what happened last summer with the riots has not been prosecuted. Most of those people have been let out. So it seems and feels like equal justice, yet unequal justice. Yet the justice reporter for the New York Times says very clearly Trump supporters are the enemy of the state. What are we going to do about it?
Now, we heard President Trump on more than one occasion call the media or the press the enemy of the state, but that's a politician making a remark about the media. It's not a supposedly impartial journalist making that same assessment. The New York Times has got a clear policy about social media. It says, quote, "In social media posts, our journalists must not express partisan opinions, promote political views, endorse candidates, make offensive comments, or do anything else that undercuts the Times' journalistic reputation." In your estimation, did this tweet cross that line?
Well, that assumes that the Times has a journalistic reputation anymore. Of course, this crossed that line. Of course, this is something they should deal with, but they won't. they'll let it fade away. They'll ignore it. She'll provide a rationalization, and the rest of us will continue to not believe the reporting that comes out of the New York Times. You know, it used to be they had what was on the front page was the news side. And then you had the opinion. Then they started news analysis, which was their ability to provide their left-wing opinion into the news. Now the whole thing is an opinion page, and it's unfortunate because you want to believe that you could go somewhere. It's not the New York Times. It's not the Twitter feed of the New York Times. That's her internal, honest musings in real time, which is ultimately far more revealing of how she feels than something that's copy edited 4 times and makes its way to the front page. So I think it tells us all we need to know, and that's why Donald Trump called these types of journalistic outlets and the journalists that work there enemies of the state, enemies of free thinking, because it's not a political party. This is the press. And when they're on one side only, it means where do we go to get real information? We've got to pick and choose all over the place.
All right, Pete Hegseth for us today. Pete, thank you so much.
You can rehearse it tonight, John. That's all right. Don't worry about it.
I'm going to stand in front of the mirror for 20 minutes saying the name.